Please remain seated. The show will begin in 3, 2...
Like a Hellcat.
Hello, ghoul friends, those who are freaky chic, fans of the supernatural, and all things spooky. I'm your host, FandomTraveller87. Welcome back to my channel. Before I continue on with this next terrifying tale that I know you'll just want to sink your teeth into, I just want to remind you that if anyone out there has a story of theirs that they would love to personally share with me for me to feature in a future video project, then please go directly to my business email, hopegivesyouvings.com@gmail.com. And the story can also be creepypasta or perhaps something paranormal related. And if you wish to remain anonymous, that is fine as well. I'll make sure to give you credit, of course. Now then, without further ado, let's dive right back into the burial vault. And of course, at any time, if you wish to exit the video, because if it may be too scary for you, then by all means. Now, let's dive right back in. Enjoy. For the record, I'm not, nor ever was a fan of Chuck E. Cheese growing up, and for the past 15 years of my life, since I was 10 years old, I was always surrounded by all things related to the restaurant chain. To give a bit of context, my grandma Ellen was the owner of our local Chuck E. Cheese since 1973, and given her years of experience in the field of managing the business, she was very dedicated to the position. But such dedication led to a rather peculiar obsession, a passion which she shared immensely with the rest of the family. For her old age in the recent years before her passing, she was extremely upbeat and childlike by nature when it came to the job, and she loved putting a smile on everyone who came through those doors. I loved my grandma, but there came a point where she became a different person, unrecognizable. She stopped listening to family and friends, closed herself off, hid away as often as possible, and nobody, not even me, understood this, because none of us could figure out why she acted this way. It wasn't until I was 10 when I was forced to visit her during the summer of 2008, and I was alone with my grandparents in their 3-story house in the suburbs, that I discovered something I wish I could erase from my thoughts. That very moment when normalcy, the sense of all logic and rationality, was gone in my once happy childhood. And to this day, it still lingers in my mind. It is a nightmarish spectacle that has, and always will, scar me. It is a heavy weight that I will carry with me, and a dark cloud that will always follow and hover to cast away the light and the joys of life. Because of this very thing, that even if it may look innocent and harmless, I will tell you that don't be fooled by appearances. It will consume what is in its range of sight, feed off of emotions good and bad, and will rob its target of their sanity and destroy them so that it may take their place. This thing wants attention, and by all means it will do whatever it takes to get it, even at the expense of someone's suffering. I first experienced the disturbing and unsettling incidences when I came across it, that thing in the basement, surrounded by murals on the walls, furniture, collectibles, and all things Chuck E. Cheese, all stuff most of which were from when my grandma started working at the one location in our city. By design, this animatronic amongst the others were janky, even in movement, and the mouse himself by definition was the creepiest thing I had ever seen. He had his own stage like the one in the restaurant, and he stood there on that platform motionless and staring into a blank, empty space. By the dim light, the only source of light in the entire room, which flickered, it ominously just remained stationary. But not for long. My 10-year-old self, that tomboy who wasn't usually scared of anything really, didn't want to stay another minute in that basement. But in looking back, I realized how much of a stupid kid I was for deciding to approach that robot and touch it. But my curiosity just got the better of me. I slowly walked up to the stage, and the head of the animatronic was still turned facing to the right. I hesitated, but I kept my eyes glued on this thing, and with a quivering hand, I poked its chest, and nothing happened. However, I didn't stop there. Little did I know the robot itself only moved when its sensors detected a person in the room, and it was supposed to be shut off, decommissioned. But as I turned to exit the stage, I felt something grab my shoulder, and I spun around, shrieked as the robot leaned in close to my face, making this distorted sound that was hard to make out. It soon loosened its grip, and I fell backward, landing on the cold cement floor, my heart racing, and I fucking lost my shit, as this thing was now looking directly at me. I could hear the gears turning and the clicking of the eyelids, seeing its head tilt and it extending an arm to reach out for me. I then was called out by my grandfather Lee and my grandmother, who paid no attention at all to the Chuck E. Cheese animatronic, and as soon as they hurried to me to check if I was all right, I told them what just happened and pointed at the robot. But when they looked at it, it was back in the same position as I found it before. They said it was impossible for it to have changed positions or even talk or move in the slightest, because it wasn't fully functional, they told me. It needed repairs done, and so they reassured me that everything was okay. I know what I saw and heard, and that thing sprung to life. In my family, I was never given credit or taken seriously, and my grandparents believed I had some really active imagination. For the first week in that house, little stuff here and there started out mild, and then progressively got worse. I remember sleeping in the farthest room, closest to the basement door, and I kept that door locked, or had a chair propped up underneath, because I swear, when I was by myself, I felt eyes watching me, this presence everywhere I went. I'd take a shower or a bath, and I would just feel like I wasn't alone. One night, I ordered a cheese pizza and I was sitting in the living room watching cartoons. It was past my curfew, but my grandparents worked late, and so I got away with not being in bed by 8:30, and I was allowed to make phone orders for takeout, 'cause I was that spoiled kid. I got up to get another root beer out of the fridge, and the lights started flickering. All doors upstairs opened with loud creaks and slammed violently, in perfect sync. I nearly dropped my bottled root beer, and I closed the fridge, rushing back into the living room to find my box of 12 pizza slices gone. My heart sunk as I then stepped barefoot in some melted cheese and bread crust droppings, and I had followed the trail up the stairs, which led to the basement door that was now open. The air grew colder each time I descended the rickety steps, and it was insanely dark. I entered the basement and blindly felt for the light switch, but the fuse was blown, even though the electrician had just replaced everything and made it all work like brand new. I then bumped into something large, and I saw red as I glanced up quickly. Red eyes flashing from the Chuck E. Cheese robot, and it laughed maniacally. Its audio absolutely demonic. I screamed bloody murder, and in my shock, I collapsed to the floor and blacked out. I woke up in my bedroom, surrounded by my grandparents, who scolded me for going into the basement. I tried to explain what really happened, but even now I saw how crazy it sounded. How something that was not human, a robot mouse that was quote unquote shut off, somehow managed to get downstairs and steal my cheese pizza. My grandparents just shook their heads, and for 2 weeks I was punished severely by doing chores. That was not what I would call ideal for any kid my age at the time. Hard, back-breaking labor. And this was enforced by my grandmother. My grandfather tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. My grandma was stubborn, and this is when I first noticed how deep into the realm of self-destructiveness she had gone. I was tasked with cleaning the animatronic by using a spray bottle, a sponge, and a hand towel. I had to thoroughly clean everything, get rid of the cobwebs, and remove the mold. I had spent 3 hours doing so, and I wasn't allowed to eat, and I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom either. I had to use a bucket to do my business in. My stomach was growling, and I was exhausted. After that, I was sent to bed early, and in the middle of the night, I heard heavy metallic footsteps in the basement and things getting thrown, glass shattering. This was going on for 5 minutes, and the next thing I knew, I heard my grandma going off the deep end, and she burst into my room, dragging me out by my hair and down the stairs. My grandfather tried to calm her down, and I don't know what possessed her. But she started yelling things that made no sense. How I was disrespectful to Chuck E. Cheese, and how my actions were making him angry. I didn't know what she was talking about, and my grandpa didn't know what to think. Since then, I was banned from the basement. I would hear my grandma down there after she isolated completely. She would spend days down there, didn't even open the restaurant for weeks, and just little by little did oddball shit like cook meals for the robot mouse, sing to it, and talk to it like it was a real person. My grandfather couldn't take being there anymore, and he left, eventually filing for divorce. My parents came and got me, and having learned what had been going on, they went no contact with my grandma, and I was never allowed at her house again. My grandmother wasn't happy about it, of course, but I was relieved. This is where the story would end, but it doesn't. It is far from over. This was only the calm before the storm.